Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya wal Mursaleen. This is Mujeeb Kazi, and you're watching Washington Roundtable, powered by VOK TV. April of 22nd, three or reportedly four or five terrorists walk into a tourist space in Kashmir, one of the most beautiful meadows of Kashmir, Pahalgam, where they assassinated about 26 people that trigger almost a war between India and Pakistan. And that's what we're going to discuss with our very special guest today. We have Dr. Weinbaugh from Middle East Institute. He has served in the U.S. Department, and also he has extensive experience on the he has kept a very close eye on Pakistan and Afghanistan studies. So, Dr. Weinbaum, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
We are also joined by Kashmir Global Council President, Mr. FarooqSiddiqi, who is joining us from Canada. Mr. Siddiqui, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. And we all know what's been happening for the past 3 weeks. That has almost triggered a war between the two nuclear nations, India and Pakistan. And Kashmir has always been a bone of contention, a triggering point between the two nuclear powers. And that's what we're going to discuss at this time with Dr. Weinbaum. Dr. Weinbaum, how do you see the situation developing? Do you think the ceasefire is intact, or the war is still hovering around?
Well, technically, the ceasefire seems to be holding, but this is a very tenuous ceasefire. Everyone is on knife's edge here, and I think most observers are very worried here that it could be reignited very quickly, and India, particularly with its new doctrine, where it is stating that any attack that happens, we won't need any evidence. We know where it originated from, who's directing it, and this would be the reason for us to retaliate in the strongest possible way. And on the part of Pakistan, saying here that any kind of attack will be met with overwhelming force. So it's both sides are making threats which make it very difficult for this to somehow reach a stage of some normalization, such as it has been for some time before the attack, the attack on the tourists. So I very worrisome, I think, is the best way to put it. Neither side is really seriously talking about how there can be a reduction in tension. They're barely communicating at all. Mostly it's through mutual threats.
The problem is that both sides have a lack of deep distrust. They have they don't trust each other. They don't talk to each other. And I think part of the reason that President Trump has to jump in and to initiate the ceasefire. The problem is that India, on the other hand, refuses to have any third-party intervention between the two nations. How do you think that this issue can be solved in a way that this doesn't happen again?
Well, for that, you would have to solve the larger issue. You would have to get to the basic elements about why there is a dispute, why we are where we are. That seems next to impossible now, because for the longest time, particularly over the last several years, India has indicated that there really is no basis here for any discussion. The Kashmir issue has been a settled issue, has become a settled issue, and we have nothing to talk about. And so that means that, and at the same time, Pakistan is saying, no, Kashmir will always be there as an issue for us. We will never be satisfied with something other than a change from the status quo, presumably a free Kashmir or a Kashmir which is amalgamated within Pakistan, but that it should never have happened that Kashmir was separated. And they're saying that, so we've got two irreconcilable positions here. And look, it's been how many, 80 years or so where this has been going on. And over this time, we keep hearing the same arguments. Yes, some of the circumstances on the ground, the capabilities of the countries have changed. The nature of the warfare between them has changed. We have all that. But there really is nothing has changed in the way of the cases that they're making. You could come in at any point in the 80 years and hear it and say, well, that could have been said yesterday, which is very frustrating. My own feeling has been, and I know this does not sit well with people who feel strongly about Kashmir, understandably, but unless somehow you changed the entire relationship between India and Pakistan, that they had other reasons why they needed to resolve this. But if the focus is completely on Kashmir, as I can understand, given the way feelings are, but if Kashmir is the key to everything else, and we know that key can't be turned, 80 years it has not been turned, then we'll probably, at best, keep going where we are now, at best. If on the other hand, India and Pakistan had a great relationship otherwise, and this was an unresolved difference, I think then there would be the will on both sides to find some way to resolve the differences on Kashmir, because if we don't, it will upset our larger set of interests together. And those interests may be trade, they may be cultural interests, they may be mutual defense, they may be climate. We've got a lot of things out there that if the two countries were working together, they could resolve differences, I think. But if Kashmir is the key itself and nothing else can follow, I think we are where we are, and we'll stay that way at best.
Well, I'm going to ask you more question on this, but I'm going to go to FarooqSiddiqi and take his point of view in response to the Kashmir. Mr. Siddiqui, if Kashmir being the core issue between India and Pakistan, according to Dr. Marvin, they're not going to get anywhere. So they need to work on the other areas to build the confidence building measures to some extent before they come to the Kashmir issue. What is your take on that?
Yes, I don't disagree with that. But however, it's very important that we understand what is the basic issue. As Dr. Marvin said, the Kashmir is the basic issue. Unless that issue is not resolved, this might be repetitions every time. Now, in order to understand this international community, so far in the last 70 years have been looking at Kashmir through the prism of India and Pakistan, who emerged as two sovereign nations in 1947 after the decolonization of the British India. Now, in order to understand this Kashmir issue, is that international community has to come up with. I know there are no morals involved, but every time, whenever there is a war between India and Pakistan, the basis has been what has happened in Kashmir. If we told back to the history, in 1947 there was an invasion or raid of the tribesmen, and then the event went to the United Nations. It was India basically who wanted to have some kind of refuge and some relief from the international community to stop that aggression, which was basically orchestrated by Pakistan. Uh, Now, the second war was again in 1965, in which there were some Kashmiris and some Pakistanis also joined together for an armed struggle. And again, there was a war. In 1971, maybe there was a little exception, but the concept was the same. Then we go to Kargil war, and then we go some strikes in 2019 and now in 2025. So basically, the issue has been on Kashmir, and the suffering has been of Kashmiris. But unfortunately, in the recent war, this 3 day war, I found that nobody ever is talking about Kashmir. I mean, we have so far about more than 100 people who have died in this conflict, mostly from the line of control of either side, that be which is controlled by India or controlled by Pakistan. It is not predominantly the killings has taken place in Kashmir. And in Kashmir, there has been this terrorist act, which in our opinion, and every Kashmiri's opinion, is that who is getting advantage out of that terrorist act? Why would a Kashmiri want to be seen in the world as a terrorist whose ideology is based on communalism? In order to understand and come to some conclusion, because we are seeing a world that is ushering into the advancement of technology, and for advancement of technology you need peace all over the world. India is a great power, becoming a power, and it has to, if it claims itself to be a democratic country, then in practice it has to show the functionality of that democracy within its areas that it is controlling. Now, that is not happening. When you have certain laws, which are draconian laws, installed in Kashmir, where there is no recourse to the justice of the people for ordinary things, then the democracy is not working. I, let us forget about the resolution of Kashmir for a moment. The base is that international community has to understand that there needs to be the basic function of the democracy and morals that is being propagated by both India and Pakistan. Let me complete that there are two reports of 2019 and 2018 issued by not India, not Pakistan, not anybody else, but United Nations Human Rights Council, which lists completely the stifling of the liberty and the aspirations of the people on the both sides of it. So that should be the basis, and at least international community should talk about Kashmiris instead of India and Pakistan.
You brought up a very good point about getting an international community involvement, and who can have a more powerful voice than the president himself of the United States of America. And he recently made a comment. I'm going to go back to Dr. Marvin on this one. Dr. Marvin, you saw President Trump making a statement that he is ready to intervene to resolve the issue of Kashmir between India and Pakistan. What do you think? What does he mean by that?
who knows? He can say a lot of things and not really have any substance behind them. Uh, he would love to be seen as a peacemaker here. After all, he makes no bones about the fact that he would like to get the Nobel Peace Prize.
Mm-hmm.
And what, if you can resolve this conflict. No, I think the U.S. had an important role here to play, as it did in 2001, 2001, after the Parliament building. Remember, both sides mobilized forces, and I was in the State Department at that time.
Mm-hmm.
We were very, very concerned that this was going to erupt into conceivably a nuclear exchange. So this has been going on for, it was a 16, 19, 25. Yes, this is going to go on. But what the U.S. can do is it can encourage, but it's not in a position where it can get the parties to do something they don't want to do. For both countries, particularly for Pakistan, you could make an argument that keeping the Kashmir conflict going is important for Pakistan, and you hear this argument made here, Pakistan doesn't want to resolve it. Pakistan really it serves Pakistan's foreign policy interests. It means the military becomes more capable because it's got to be supplied. It puts that issue in front of everything else. And the fact that it's impossible to imagine that an outside party can come in and change that. Again, what I'm getting at here is the U.S. has a role to play to dampen a conflict that looks like it's about to explode. But over the long term, these countries do have to work this out between themselves. And I don't see a role for the United States or anyone else at this point. And that's where we are.
Before I ask Siddiqui Sahab, let me ask him a counter question. When you say the United States have important role to play, but at the same time you're saying that the United States may not be able to get this issue resolved, why do you say so? Do you think the Pakistani military is not going to listen to US?
Difference between defusing a conflict or dispute, which where you need mediation. Yeah. So both sides who can't talk to one another can talk to you. Put trust in you as the third party. The mediator plays an honest broker between the two sides. That's a very important role in this conflict as in other conflicts. You need to have someone who's got the credibility to do it. The U.S. has less credibility, but it still has a lot of power. It's another matter, particularly with an administration that does not have expertise here on the conflict, on the larger conflict here. It has people who know how to strike a deal, but the expertise that you need here is lacking. But essentially, you can't get beyond the fact that those basics, those core elements that we've been talking about here, have no easy resolution. You can't simply come to a ceasefire. They are complicated. They require months and years, even decades, to be able to work out the differences here. It takes time to build trust. That's not something that you can come in and do overnight.
Mr. Siddiqui, the question is, there is no credible representation from Kashmiri side on the table when it comes to Kashmir. Dr. Marvin has alluded to a very important point that all parties need to sit down and sort this out. but Kashmiris have always been sidelined. It has always been an issue between Pakistan and India, and sometimes other issues pop up. Like recently, the water issue has popped up, and all of a sudden, this terrorist attack happens, and this gets repeated after every 4 or 5 years. And the only people suffer on the ground are the people of Kashmir. How do you want to? I want you to give me the direct answer. How do you want to make sure that the Kashmiris are on the table when it comes down to discussion? Because they need to be heard out too.
Yeah, exactly. Before I answer your question, let me also look back at what has happened in, as Dr. Marvin said, that there has to be these two countries have to talk between each other, and there has to be some kind of behind the scene facilitation. Every time these countries, irrespective of whether it was India or Pakistan, came under any kind of pressure, whether that was economical, trade, or military, or political, internal or external, every time they sat down together for negotiation and peace. If you remember, there was that war, and there was a Russians came in Tashkent, and they agreed to ceasefire, and then agreed to continue to talk about Kashmir, to the extent they were thinking of having some kind of division and rearrange the borders of Kashmir. They came to that extent, and that was during the times of the then foreign minister Bhutto, who was later on president, and Savarn Singh, who was the external affairs minister. These talks and parleys went for 6 to 7 times. But in the end, there was a withdrawal from one of the sides. Then there was, as Marwin said, in 2001, there was a war on terror. President Bush was interested in supporting the resolutions of Kashmir in order to keep Pakistan on its side. And there was that 4-point formula that was put forth, and there was a lot of back channel, direct talks between India and Pakistan, and eventually it flopped. So whenever, then there was Lahore agreement to talk about, and there was other agreements also. So those agreements were basically whenever they had some pressure from outside, whether it was of trade, economy, military, political, or any other pressure. So we have seen a failed bilateralism. The bilateralism of India and Pakistan has resulted in failure, and eventually some wars coming up, which at some times today President Trump came to rescue for the ceasefire. Tomorrow, maybe nobody else is going to come up. And this can go and escalate into 1/5 of the population of the world into a nuclear war. My assertion is that when you see the bilateralism between India and Pakistan has failed, and the world has an ominous clouds of nuclear war at any stage in future, then it is, I think, in the interest of world, at least in these times when, as Dr. Marvin said, that President Trump wants to be a peacemaker, wants to get a Nobel Prize. So there is a sense of peaceful existence, as you saw in a couple of days back in one of the most radical societies of Islamic world, which was Saudi Arabia, and now you could see the opening of Middle East to collaboration, to cooperation, to peace. And we should take an opportunity from that, become peacemakers in Kashmir. Kashmir has a potential of economically be a Switzerland of Asia. And
Understand.
there's that can be taken.
Sure. Dr. Marvin, this is last question on the Kashmir issue before I dive into the other topic. Uh, in your opinion and your expertise, you have been in the State Department, you've studied India, Pakistan, you've seen Kashmir issue for 80 years. If I were to ask you if you can give ranking 1, 2, 3, who is most responsible as a biggest impediment before the issue of Kashmir being resolved? India, Pakistan, Kashmiris, India, Pakistan. How would you rank them? Who is the most responsible impediment before solving this issue of Kashmir?
Well, look, it depends on what solution you're looking for. As far as India is concerned, this was resolved in 1947. Uh, it, it's and so we're talking about apples and oranges here. As far as Pakistan is concerned, it will never be resolved until India concedes that it had no legitimate right to what became now a divided Kashmir, and so we got different really objectives here. I don't know how you would rank them because they're coming at it from different standpoints.
Here is the reason I asked this question, because everyone has their own stakes in it, and they try to address their stakes. But why Kashmiris are ignored at this time? The Kashmiris people are suffering on the ground, but they're being ignored. That's the reason.
But remember, for the longest time, Pakistan would not acknowledge the fact that the Kashmiris could take the third option.
Okay.
Only more recently have they conceded that is a real possibility, but they refused any solution which effectively gave the Kashmiris the decision as to whether they wanted to be independent, aligned with India or Pakistan. So this is the Kashmiris have always been, or most of the time, have been separated. They were not part of any of this discussion that went on over the ceasefire. But that's because at this point they don't have the representation, someone with the legitimacy to be able to say, I speak for the Kashmiri people, someone who's credible at least. I'm going to have some trouble with timing here.
Okay.
How much longer do you think?
But just one more question about Pakistan, and then we'll end the show right there.
Please.
Because this was when people found out that you would be on the show, they have asked me to make sure that I do ask this question.
Oh, please.
U.S. being a democratic country and a symbol of democracy in the world, but it appears that the U.S. is much more comfortable getting along with the dictators in the world versus the democratic forces, such as people in Pakistan who are always been dictatorial. Current generals have subdued the democracy, and then Middle East. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I think this is a statement which I've heard so often. It just so happened that whenever there was a reason for the U.S. and Pakistan to work together, there happened to be at that time a non-democratic government in Pakistan. So I certainly that I can't speak for the future here because the U.S. is changing, but I can say that no, the U.S. has always preferred to work with a government, a democratic government. But you can say this about working with an authoritarian government, that when it negotiates with you, it doesn't have to check back with the public. The military, what I'm saying, of course, is the military is much easier to work with in this circumstance. There's no question about it, because they have no constraints on them They can arrange any kind of a outcome that they choose. Again, so it really has been unfortunate that whether it's General Zia or General Musharraf, that some of the times when they most needed one another, they happened to be in the military government. But I'm saying at the same time, there were some advantages of working with a military government because their word was good enough.
Dr. Marvin, Mr. Siddiqi, thank you very much for being at the show. I'm going to have to leave it right there. Until next time, take good care of yourself. Thank you for being on the show.
Great pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you.